Welcome to Ongea na Shangazi. Karibuni sana tuongee, ni mimi shangazi yenu Maria Sarongi Tahai. Na leo tunaongea na mtu almaaruf. Nitamtaja kwanza kwa jina, anaitwa Godfrey Mwampembwa. Lakini najua wengi mnajiuliza, shangazi anazingua. Why is Godfrey Mwampembwa supposedly a celeb? Let me tell you why he's a celeb. He's more popularly known as Gado. Gado, as you all know, is a very famous, or infamous for that matter, for some people, cartoonist. And today we're going to be having a very interesting conversation. Gado, hali yako vipi?
Salama, and nashukuru kwa kunikaribisha.
Sawa, sisi ndo tumekaribia, tumekuvamia kidogo in your little kingdom. Ndo eneo ambalo all those wonderful cartoons zinatengenezwa. Lakini nimeanza kwa kusalimia na kwa kuintroduce. Watu wengi hawajui kwamba jina la Mwampembwa ni jina ambalo si la Kikenya, ingawa watu wengi wanajua wewe ni Mkenya.
Mimi ni Mtanzania. Nimezaliwa Tanzania, nimekulia Tanzania, nimesoma Tanzania. Hapa nilianza kufanya kazi, lakini kwa sababu nilianza muda mrefu sana, kutoka mwaka 92. Kwa hiyo watu wengi ambao wamenizoea wanajua kwanza jina Gado. Na kwa sababu ya toka muda huo wote, they all know kwamba mimi ni Mkenya. Yes. Wajui kwamba mimi ni Mtanzania, nimekulia Tanzania, nimesoma Tanzania, hapa nilikuja tu kuanza kazi. Of course, na watoto wangu wamezaliwa hapa, lakini mimi ni Mtanzania kabisa. Na kwa sababu labda ya kwa muda huo nina uelewa mzuri wa mazingira na siasa za Kenya. Kwa hiyo ni rahisi watu kufikiri mimi ni Mkenya. Na nimeishi miaka mingi hapa, kwa hiyo mara nyingi nachukuliwa kama Mkenya.
That's very interesting. Sasa, it means kwamba wewe umesoma mpaka kuwa a cartoonist? Yeah. Is there something that you can study actually to become a cartoonist?
Well, these days you can. I only, I think a lot of times unakuwa na hiyo talent, lakini I had the talent of drawing, and I studied fine art in my secondary school years. Lakini hapa nilipoanza nilianzia hapo, lakini baadaye nilisoma animation and films, and so I'm a classical animator in Vancouver, Canada. I studied communication and in Treviso, Italy. Kwa hiyo ikanipa wakati na muda wa kujifunza zaidi. Editorial cartooning itself these days inafundishwa mashuleni. I mean, mimi mwenyewe nimefunza au nimetoa lectures na talks kwenye shule mbalimbali. And so siku hizi inafundishwa, lakini kimsingi pia unakuwa lazima uwe na mvuto na uwe na talent kidogo. Sasa talent sometimes inakuwa overrated. You know, watu wanafikiri ni talent. No, inabidi kuwa na hiyo talent. But pia wewe ni media practitioner na ni journalist. So kwa kiasi kikubwa lazima upractice kama mwanahabari. Na kuna wanahabari, najua kuna editorial cartoonist wengi ambao ni wanahabari kabisa. Kwa hiyo ni trained journalist. So kwa hiyo hilo linachangia kwa kiasi kikubwa kwa wewe katika kazi yako. Sasa kwa mimi ni mwanahabari practically, ama practitioner katika hilo.
You've touched kidogo kwamba umesomea fine art in secondary school. Secondary school ya hapa au ya TC?
Mimi nilisoma Azania Secondary School, so the product ya Azania, na born and bred in Dar. Kwa hiyo nimekulia Dar es Salaam, lakini nilikuwa na mvuto wa kuchora toka wakati niko shuleni. In fact, I did went to after my secondary school years and also national service, nilikuwa nafanya a course in architecture at Art Institute, which is now part of the Islam, university. But I absconded my studies to start working, something that I promised my parents that I will go back to finish my course. I hope to go back to finish 30 years later.
Very good, very good. But I think now getting to you working as a cartoonist, you know, you are basically a household name in East Africa.
Really?
Yes, you are.
No,
so it means you've been drawing quite a number of, well, first of all, high-level leaders, primarily, of course, politicians. Yeah. And you've very accurately, at times, send a zinger or send an arrow right through the egos, but in a very fair and critical manner. Why do I say that? For Tanzanians, for example, tunakumbuka wakati ule ulipigwa mpaka ban kuingia, I think, au ulikuwa walitoa gazeti lile la East African baada ya wewe kumchora rais wa wakati huo Jakaya Kikwete akiwa amezungukwa na wanawake. Na that was a bold move. I mean, kitu gani kwa mfano wewe ulivyochora kitu kama hicho? Ulikuwa unawaza nini? Unajua watu wengi wanakuwa wanauliza umewaza nini?
So it's fair to say that I've been lucky. It's very important to note that I started working, professionally at an institution that is Daily Nation, that allowed me to do that. I mean, so I was bold, yes, but also it's because I was given the opportunity to be bold. And the newspaper and my editors defended me and protected me. So that's very important. And I think lots of artists hawana hiyo platform. Sio rahisi kupata. Hatuna magazeti mengi, hatuna vyombo vya habari ambavyo viko katika ranki hiyo kwa wakati huu. Wamiliki ambao wanaweza Sasa Nation as a newspaper ilinipa mimi wakati huo, na watu hawajui kwamba mara nyingi nimekuwa kuingia katika shida hapa na pale, lakini Nation wamekuwa siku zote wanatetea, kwa sababu kwanza kazi yako ikisha kuchapishwa katika gazeti, ina maana gazeti lina kesi ya kujibu kama kukitokea kesi yote. Kwa hiyo that is one thing that has always is always forgotten. And so I was lucky enough, despite my abilities, I was lucky enough to get that opportunity kuanza very early on, when I was very young, to do that. And most importantly also, I was able to work with very fantastic editors and very good journalists. And so I was able to learn quickly and to be able to do what I do. And in fact, the drawing hiyo unayoiongelea ya Kikwete ilipigwa, I think ilisababisha gazeti la East Africa kuwa banned kwa mwaka mzima. And so you had a situation where I remember doing that drawing, and it was one of the drawing that was okay. I don't think my editors really even questioned it. And it was only a week later, if I'm not mistaken, that, all hell broke loose. And I think the authorities in Dar were unhappy. And, so the East Africa was told to apologize, which it did. But then later on, there was, I think the authorities decided to say, no, we have to teach you a lesson. So the newspaper the East Africa was banned, which did cost the nation quite a lot of money. You can imagine for the whole year. And so that was quite something that nobody expected. I personally, I think, I always laugh because I think I've done probably more ferocious drawings that I didn't think that actually they would react that way. But the interesting thing with that is that I don't know from what I had. Yes. What this is, don't quote me on this. Yes. Is that because the drawing basically had JK surrounded by women, and you know, you had, so these women that, you know, labels, you know, cronyism, yes. Corruption, yes. And all the things that Jakaya Kikwete, exactly, yeah. That, you know, so basically saying, you know, the president, you are engaging in all these things, and you know, as an emperor, you know, who's actually being fed and all that. So I suppose the idea of women around him was probably a little bit too close, because Jakaya Kikwete is accused of actually, you know, his reputation with ladies, and so I think that's probably is what actually caused that.
So, who is the most thin-skinned politician that you've ever met? If you can answer that. Who really took it personally?
Yeah, they are very interesting politicians. I think they are used. These are people who are they are used to be clapped on, and so they really don't like to be put down. And the role of editorial cartoonist is basically to tell the emperor you have no clothes. Ni kuwavua nguo wanasiasa. Na ni wanasema editorial cartoons basically na wadharau, and rightly so. They disrespect, you know, in quotes, in the sense that you disrespect, and that's they have that license, you know, and so the idea is to kusema kwamba viongozi ni watu, na ni watu kama wa kawaida, and so sio miungu hawa. Kwa hiyo editorial cartoons ndio zinawa remind viongozi, nyinyi sio miungu, na zinawaambia the society hawa sio, ni watu tu na wanafanya makosa, and so, you know, they are fallible. Kwa hiyo wanasiasa na viongozi wengi hawapendi. Kwa hiyo katika wengine wanavumilia. I think I've met probably one of few people who are, you know, don't mind that. Majority of them are actually quite they don't take it kindly. I think they've over the years, I will not mention them, but I should share my files. Yes. I mean, I have letters, and people who have, you know, written to threaten me, people who have personally threatened me. So I mean, you know, cases that the nation had to settle. I mean, and that's not alone. I mean, even my colleagues have faced that, you know, that. So, you know, you need, as an editorial cartoonist, to develop a thick skin. You need to be able to do that, because it can unsettle you. They can. I mean, my family has been threatened. I have been threatened. So you need a little bit of that to be able to do that day in, day out. And I have at the personal level, what I do is I maintain an arm's length you know, with these characters, and you know, I find them quite interesting creatures anyway.
Have you ever really felt that threatened? I mean, was it like all talk on Nitishia? How there was a time you said this threat can actually become real. I have to, you know, really now take precaution.
There are times that I did, you know, it can be real. I mean, I remember very well that one time I think I did, and by the way, it's not only leaders. So you have also religious institutions that are very, business leaders. I know at one time, I think the Muslim community, you know, here, you know, were very offended by my cartoon, and I received threats, and that was before the Danish cartoons, by the way. And the nation,
Salman Rushdie,
it was after Salman Rushdie, but it was actually 2005. And I remember that I got threats. You know, we had to pull that cartoon out of out of online, and you know, the nation had to apologize on its front page about that particular drawing, and so that can unsettle you. Especially also when your family is threatened, and so you do that. I mean, recently with the online and social media, I probably get that alone, but you have all manners of crazy people online, and so you probably brush them aside, but watu hao wapo, and I think unachotakiwa ni kuwa na wanasema lazima sasa uwe na ngozi ngumu, inabidi develop tu ngozi ngumu. Hakuna swala lingine.
Na katika kwa mfano creative process, je, unakuwa unashiriki, wewe unakuwa ni part of the editorial meeting, unakaa unawasikiliza, mnaongea?
Both. I mean, they are mostly I work it's a very lonely job. Lakini I don't mind, and I always enjoy, being part of the editorial meetings. I don't do that with some publications. I do, and I enjoy that very much. I actually like the idea of also hearing other people. My editors, actually, one of the things that ambacho nimefanya vizuri over these years nimekuwa na ushirikiano mzuri sana na my editors, and I must admit that they've been a huge part of my career, because I always say that we've had a love-hate relationship with my editors, because sometimes they're very annoyed with me, sometimes they've been very good, and they've given me brilliant ideas whereby they would say, okay, maybe you can change this. Sometimes they've even said, look, wait, hold this idea better. We have actually a good story, or let's hold it for 2 days and so forth. So that collaboration is always also important, and it is always helpful. So I don't mind, but you basically ni wewe mwenyewe ulazima ukae ufikirie, uje na mawazo gani, uje na kitu gani. So inachotakiwa pia kufanya, inatakiwa uwe mtu ambaye unasoma sana habari zinaendeleaje, kujua nini kinatokea, kujua mambo yanayotokea duniani, but sio tu kusoma internet and magazeti. No, indeed you need also to read a lot, and I try to read as much as I can in terms of the in-depth issues. So for example, if you're dealing with the issue of climate change, I mean, for you to do effective editorial drawings, I mean, you really need also to get into what this issue is all about. And so you really need to get to read about the science about it, what's going on. If you talk about, for example, refugees and all that, I mean, you can only do better drawings if actually you know better about what the refugees are going through. So that is one thing that you need to do, and that's one thing I try as much as I can to do, to really get in depth about the real issues of the subjects that I deal with. And then the next challenge now is, how do you relate that to your readers and to your audience? And so you of course have to do a number of sketches at times. And the issue of drawing itself is not that complicated. I mean, it's unless you have as many characters and all that, but it is the ideas. And I think that goes to many of my colleagues. And
you do have to get the big picture.
Yeah.
What you said about that, what comes to my mind is you have to have the big picture, but you also need to see the connections.
Yes.
I think that is what makes really your work stand out among all the other cartoonists, especially on the regional level, that you do see the connections. So it means you get to see the connections of, let's say, one particular politician in that environment, and you have to show that you understand the local context.
Precisely.
Huwezi ukachora ukasema kwa sababu mimi labda niko Kenya sielewi kinachoendelea Uganda au kinachoendelea sehemu nyingine duniani.
Yes.
So you have to immerse yourself, inabidi uelewe vizuri, inabidi pia kama ulivyosema, ukitoka na katuni yako, mtu anaishi katika hiyo nchi, aone mpaka vile vitu vidogo aanze kucheka. I'll tell you what I love. I love the series you've made about Magufuli. Na nakumbuka kwamba ulianza kutoa tuseme ulitoa angalizo mapema. Wakati bado wengine hata personal, lakini watu wengi bado tulikuwa tunamuona kwamba kuna jambo la maana atakuja kufanya. Ulianza kutoa, wanasema warning, kutoa onyo, ukionyesha kwamba sasa ameshaanza kuattack kikundi fulani. Na kumbuka kuna cartoon onyesha hiyo kidogo, watu wanasema it's a bit, of course, maybe exaggerated, wanasema ni unabii. Yani kuna uwezekano ule wa kwamba unaona vitu ambavyo watu bado hawajaona. Do you think that's a talent au inatokana na hizi research zako?
It's a combination of both. I think that is a combination of also as an artist, as a journalist, what I must admit also, I mean, I've been around for a while now. So I mean, when Magufuli came to town, I mean, you can only also compare him to other leaders, and so you definitely also try as much to say, okay, what has he got? So so artists are also, really, editorial cartoonists are also sort of like skeptics. We question everything. So if Maria comes here, you're like, no, we will question you, and that's we start from that premise, and so that is very helpful in the sense that it's not an art of clapping. It's an art. The moment anybody comes, whether you have the Pope there, you start finding out, okay, what can I question this Pope? You have a new president, is that what do we have on him? And so satire thrives on that. I mean, we have to start from there. And so that is also, so it's part of it. Now, then you have to build on it. You have to build on your research. You have to build on this, on your reading.
But readings. There is the gut feeling.
Yes, there is a gut feeling. And part of it is actually, the gut feeling is part of it is how you have developed, how also you have read, how also you have over the years, and you have to read quite a lot. And so, for example, even, I always, and I'm constantly in contact with my fellow, artists, my journalists. I mean, I call in Tanzania the people I know, and I would ask questions. I say, well, but, there is an issue I'm dealing with, what do you know about it? So I'm constantly in it. It's not something that you start sometimes, you have a white blank piece of paper and there you have, then, kesho uko na katuni. Sometimes ideas zinachukua even wiki, mwezi, miezi, because sometimes huna kile unachokitafuta au unachotaka kusema. Kwa hiyo na katika hilo una end up kuongea na watu mara nyingi sana. Napiga simu Tanzania, Uganda, South Africa, where the squeezy kuna internet, and Nigeria. I have friends and nilikuwa nafanya kazi, kuna katuni ya Peter Obi, and I've read a bit about it. I haven't come with an idea, but I spoke to a good friend of mine in Nigeria who gave me a very good insight about him. And so that is how you're supposed to, if you want to be effective, and if you want actually to have an impact, or if you want your work to have an impact. So it's something that you have to develop.
So based on that, do you also get ideas from common mwananchi, apart from kuongea na waandishi wa habari na nini, mwananchi tu wa kawaida, au pia do you get ideas online, unasoma tu wanaongea nini watu, what inspires you? Wananchi
wa kawaida. In fact, that's where you get the best political analysis ever. Kwa wananchi wa kawaida. Forget about it, unasoma. In fact, I've developed some of my best drawings have come from just common mwananchi. So I have the habit, for example, whenever I take taxis, I always engage taxi drivers in a political talk. Nitauliza tutasema sasa kunaendelea vipi hapa. Unasemaje? And the analysis you get there, you will not get anywhere. Whenever I go to my barber, I enjoy that. I would just throw, and the beauty about it is that they just don't know me. So, we just actually just say, okay, and they'll be honest about it. I mean, if I get an opportunity somewhere, I would just probably, what do you think about it? And then I just let the people, them speak. And you get quite some wonderful analysis of of the political issues, because sometimes we tend to argue issues from a very, very, very wrong perspective. I mean, the common man will always give you, a very, very, the sensitive bits of the political debates.
Let's get now to actually talking about your work and also recognition. How many awards have you received? And what is the best recognition that you can recall?
Well, I mean, they are all the best. It's difficult to say which ones are. But I've not gotten that many. I mean, I think I've gotten. Recently, I got one, the what they call the French one from the French government. That's the recent one. Chevalier des ordres, des lettres et des arts. I think
so can
des arts.
Sir Gado?
No, apparently the French one doesn't come with that.
Oh.
The French one, it does
The
just
French one.
yeah, it doesn't come with that. But I got the Kenya Human Rights Award, and also the Kenya Human Rights. I got twice of that, so I'm very proud of that. I got the the KUJ one. I got that. I was very proud. I got one with the cartoonist for peace. They awarded me with one in Switzerland, and I got one with the Ford Foundation. They had me one visionary award for my work in television, and so I've been lucky enough to get a few of those.
So the XYZ show, people don't really know that much. I mean, people do not necessarily associate you with that show. But I know that it's your but that's your brainchild. That's something that you have immersed yourself a lot into developing, and it has been a huge work, by the way.
Yeah, it has been a huge work. People didn't know that I did that in 2003. So it took me about 7 years first before I could actually. So I did developed it. I created it, developed it, but I've also been, of course, with the help of some of our partners. But also I worked with the success of the show has been because I worked with brilliant artists, voice artists, and a brilliant team behind it. And so I was lucky enough. The show goes on. I don't produce it anymore. I'm just there by name, but we have also a fantastic team that produces it. But it has been fun. It has been quite a lot of hard work because we had to start from scratch. We didn't have any reference. And it's also a very expensive show, so it's not an easy to produce one puppet. It's thousands of shillings.
How difficult is it, because you also have to actually produce puppets that look like real life people?
So that's actually not the difficult bit, because we developed a very good style, and we had a very good artist that could draw those artists, and we had people don't know that you had a team of about 50 people, over 50 working on it when we were on show. So, and it take a month to get the puppet. So we have actually, so if we are to do a puppet of Maria, for example, we'll actually have a hairdresser who has to come up with your hair. You have an artist who have to work for some weeks over your bust and your face and up to, and then one puppet is operated by 2 people. So you have normally, whatever scene you put, you have to multiply by 2. Those are the people involved, in the background. And then, of course, we had the post-production people, we had animators, we had voice talents before that, and we had, each show we had about 5. At any go, we had about 5 writers, and I was part of it. So we had actually, that's why I'm telling you, we had a team of, when we started, we had a bigger team, at one time up to 80, but we cut the team, and we were doing it week in, week out. So it was a big show, and it was a big success in terms of the impact. And in terms of also one of the things I'm proud of, we were always in control of largely to our editorial policy, which is very difficult to get with any with any TV station. So it was actually a very good success. We have gone to do other television shows, but of course I'm proud of the XYZ show, and as I said, now I don't do it anymore. We have other producers that are trying to do, and we did 14 seasons, so that's not
great.
Yeah,
I think very few shows actually get
very few shows, and again, as I said, it's actually, I won't get into numbers, but it's a very expensive show because of actually you have to buy specific. So if we are to do Maria again, we have to buy also garments that are Maria. So we actually, and that's the challenge with it. You can't actually. So when we did, for example, a puppet of Raila Odinga, we have to do him with his shirts, and we had to actually to work with actual tailors to do that for us. So it was actually, people did not know, but largely it's also very expensive show, very demanding show. It's 24/7 kind of show, and we had a. But as I said, we also had a very up to today. I think it has a fantastic team of artists, and I was lucky enough to work with those guys, and we still work with them, at Buni, and so I think even though it was very difficult at the beginning, it was worth it. So.
You have worked also outside the East African sort of region, and you've been also almost, I would say, inspiring or consulting on projects which are more Pan-African.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
I think I've always been a Pan-African, for some interestingly long. Even when I was a kid, I was always interested in foreign affairs. I remember, I was always being glued to listen to BBC as a kid because we didn't have television in Dar. In Tanzania, but I was always glued to BBC, and I was always reading. My dad would come with Newsweek, and I would read, and I really felt so. Somehow I was always that kind of guy. I was always very interested in foreign affairs, and so I even when we started Buni with my co-founder Marie Laura Mungai. Our vision was also to do Pan-African project. Indeed, the XYZ was a very Pan-African, idea. And so we did also what you would call an offshoot of that with Ogas at the top, which did actually in Nigeria. We worked with Nigerian writers. I enjoyed visiting Nigeria with that, and we are thinking of actually reviving that. And we did everything here, but we did actually, the writers, we worked with them over Skype. We'd write stuff over online. I've worked with artists from Zimbabwe. We've worked with artists in Uganda. We've trained artists there, by the way. We've worked with artists in Tanzania. I've enjoyed working, and actually we are trying to see if we can do more of that. We've worked with artists in Sudan. We've trained them here. We've worked with artists in. There was an opportunity to work with artists in Senegal, but we only traveled there. That did not come to fruition, and so we have been very. I've been actually lucky enough also to work with these artists, and it has been actually something that I've enjoyed immensely. I've been part and parcel of Cartoonists for Peace, and so in that also I've been able to. Online to give talks, across the continent in some countries, and even in Europe and also in other countries. As an individual, I think I've given talks to students in the US, and recently I had a very wonderful discussion with a university in Korea, and so. That has been part and parcel of also giving away. Here in Nairobi, I've also in Kenya, I've been very happy to speak to students in schools, and it's my way of giving back.
Getting back to the environment that you grew up on, they say kwamba mazingira yale yanakuwa affect all the way along, and they shape who you are. What is it that you think you brought from that life, apart from hiyo ya kusoma, in terms of peer pushing back against, now what we call the authoritarian or the authority figure, not necessarily authoritarian, but authoritative figures like leaders, whether they're business leaders, religious leaders. What made you a rebel? Did it come from that childhood, or did it come from somewhere else?
I think I was one of these naughty kids, but my mother will tell you that. But also, lazima niseme, I think if one person I can give credit for this, my mother. So my mom was very, I think she was my first teacher, but also she was the person who sort of could see my talents, if you were to say so. And I remember very well, I was, even with all those difficulties, I had a university lecture when I was standard 5 as my art teacher. That is a privilege. And I was only looking back at that but it's my mother, because she knew her colleague used to have her colleague's husband used to teach at University of Dar, Mwalimu Mwenesi. So Mwalimu Mwenesi alikuwa mwalimu wangu wa kwanza wa art. So I used to borrow art pieces from him, alafu naenda nyumbani nachora, nampelekea pale, you know, university pale, karibu na Mlimani, kwa sababu mimi nimesoma Mlimani primary. You know, kwa hiyo, when I look back, is that my mom was able to see that, and you know, so she went to Mwalimu Mwenesi akamwambia, my boy, you know, and so that inspired me. And then when I was in when I first went to Forodhani secondary, but they didn't have fine art and so my mom was advised, and I think he went and asked for a transfer. I went to Azania where they teach fine art. So I mean, all these things sort of like inspired.
Because at that time, by the way, fine art ilikuwa ni kama huyu ameshafeli aende tu akasome art.
You know, I look back, I mean, she was always supportive, on the lookout and very supportive.
But she allowed you also to be a rebel?
No, I don't think she allowed. I think I was always somebody who's behind the scenes. So, you know, so I was a little bit of that, but I think I wasn't, I was always that kind of, I think my editors also would say that, because somebody who would want to do things on the contrary to, you know, I was always asking why, even as so I think I had a little bit of that. I always had a bit, you know, I think a bit of that, you know, a bit of a rebel in me. And I also didn't like losing, whether it's an argument, whether it's like I was very competitive, you know, as a on the pitch. I played football very competitively when in my younger days, and I didn't like to lose. That one I know very well. I mean, I didn't like to lose. In fact, I remember the first time I cried is when we lost in the Uniseta game. We didn't lose, actually. We drew our game. So we didn't continue to the next. I remember we traveled all the way to Mwanzo for the tournament from Dar, and I represented Kanda ya Mashariki. And it pained me we did not proceed. So I think I didn't like to lose, you know, whether it's an argument or it's on the pitch. And so I kind of grew up that way. But I must also add that I think I also started working very young, and that shaped me, because, you know, immediately I developed, you know, I worked in a very independent organization, a very big organization, where I had to work with independent minds and very professionals. When you start that it shapes you, and it built me. And so I was able to learn from, you know, you don't get to learn that kind of stuff in school. You learn it by actually, you know, doing it. So that was also something that, you know, I mean, I got to work with people like Wahome Mutahi, you know, much when I was much younger. My colleague and my friend Mada, you know, the artist, you know, Paul and Frank, you know, the late Frank Odoi was an artist, and, you know, these were very, you know, professionals. You know, when I came into the scene, they were already, you know, there, and so I learned a lot from them.
In a very long career, because you said you started working at a young age, what I would say, I'll give you three. What are the three cartoons that you recall that sort of shaped or added to your work body, and also maybe said a lot about you or gave you a unique experience? The ones that immediately, with this question, you can recall.
Okay, so there are many. Lakini labda kuna one. I think the one that I remember is the one about, so the interesting thing, just to add it, is that sometimes the cartoons that I think that are very impactful and I love them, and all, they are not the ones that, you know, people love it. And it is sometimes I do a good idea, but a random one, and sometimes it causes all these issues, and I even wonder. So one is the one I did when, you know, it's called the one I did when Moi retired. I think I did a drawing of him saying, you know, a picture, a cartoon of Moi, and saying, you know, the person appearing there is no longer the president of Kenya and is not allowed to transact in a business. And basically, I took the idea from the notices that appear in a newspaper when actual companies advertise somebody has messed up something. And it's just the impact. It's just that it was the reaction was so impactful. I mean, there were people who cast me and they said you are disrespectful and all that. And it was quite surreal because I didn't expect that. So it was actually quite 2002. It was quite that is memorable because I remember very well the reaction. I think that was it. And then I think the other one is that I did a cartoon of during Kibaki, of Lucy Kibaki, the late Lucy Kibaki, sitting on Kibaki and Kibaki signing something. And I actually got that idea from my barber, actually. My barber actually just, you know, one day said, he said, we were talking and I asked him what, you know, and he said, huyo mama amemkalia sana huyu mzee. So I said, okay, I just said, okay, this is interesting. I mean, you know, and actually, literally, I did that. So that was not published. My editors, actually, my editor, I sneaked it behind my editors, but my editorial director, Wangezi, caught up with it. It's like 2 o'clock. No, sorry, naongea saa Kiswahili, which I do most of the time. 8 in the evening, and he withdrew it. But they forgot to withdraw the online version of it. So online it went. Sasa kesho yake vumbi likatokea. Online, and the nation was accused of censoring itself and all that things, and so my editor, remember, you know, he memoed me, and my editorial director Wangezi Mwangi, who, you know, really, you know, I have a lot to thank him because he was wonderful, you know, editor and boss. I mean, he kind of, you know, warned me with dire consequences if I repeat that. But it was that I remember because, you know, there was also a lot of, you know, that reaction, and I also didn't think that, you know, it deserved that kind of reaction. But there were lots of you know, people who actually were, you know, kind of, there were a lot of people who were happy, but it was also at that time when we had, you know, Kibaki. I think it was also the golden time for cartoonists, but also you had a situation where we were trying to deal with Kibaki as a president because he came with a lot of goodwill, and in the beginning we didn't also not know how to deal with him because he's this guy who actually was just won against a dictator of many years. But kwa hiyo kulikuwa na mchanganyiko kidogo hapo, lakini baada ya muda, so that cartoon was very, very ilileta shida kidogo na ilikuwa na impact. So that was and then the third one, of course, it's probably the Jakaya Kikwete one, simply because also it's that I didn't expect, and yeah, you know, it for a whole year that was a bit of and which is also, it led to many other things because, you know, I mean, the authorities in Dar, they were very adamant that, you know, they didn't want to listen to anything. I mean, they just said, no, we'll teach you a lesson. And so the paper was just basically, despite numerous, you know, explanations and all that. And so, you know, when I look back, I you know, but that tells you also the power of speaking truth to power, and also the power of editorial cartoons. Editorial, and it's not me alone. I mean, throughout history, if you look at in Europe, in America, since antiquity, I mean, satire has that power. It upsets emperors and presidents, and because you demean them, you know, you make them look small. These are human beings, so cartoons basically make them look small, and they don't like that, I suppose.
Working situated in Kenya, do you think that that has also helped you because of the freedom, compared to, let's say, if you would be today a cartoonist in Tanzania, with that cartoon of Kikwete, sijui gazeti lile lingefungiwa au nawe ungefungwa.
I don't think hata kungekuwa na editor labda angesema ange-entertain, you know, to begin with. So as I said, I must admit, yes, I mean, think kufanya kazi hapa imesaidia simply because nilikuwa nafanya kazi na an independent organization ambayo nation as it was independent, and kulikuwa na unaweza kusema modicum of freedom hapa na at least kwa kiasi fulani. Kwa hiyo kwa kiasi kikubwa ilisaidia, na kiasi kikubwa iliniwezesha mimi kuchora michoro hiyo, kwa sababu yes, namba moja, you see the way if you know even this is not even going to be published, you will not even think about it. I mean, you start thinking about it if you are, you see the freedom of expression starts with it does exactly, thank you very much, it starts with freedom to think. So if you are, you know, you start self-censorship, you start thinking, okay, this will not. But I was lucky enough to start working at an environment where I was allowed to think, I was allowed to express myself.
But it was not only your boss in this case, but also the law. I
yes,
mean,
and also the law.
They wouldn't come and get you.
They wouldn't. I mean, over the years, I must admit, there have been actually lots of, I must say also, you know, lawsuits against my drawings. People, again, I said, this is the importance, you know, it's very important to understand that also once you work also with, you know, for an established organization, is that all these, you know, drawings that I did, they were behind the scenes, some of them that they were, I was taken to, the paper was taken to court, you know, to answer questions, but the paper did go to court, and that's important, that they defended also that freedom of expression. At no point my editors would come, and I think we would discuss it and we would figure out, and you know, there are times they would say, okay, you know, hold on, you know, we have a court case here, which is fair, and I think, but you know, lots of our artists didn't have that privilege, don't have that privilege even today. It's a privilege, and what I've always also tell people that it has been a privilege to do what I do, and so I also treat it with that humility, but also with that kind of understanding that yes, you know, the others don't have this opportunity to do that what I do.
My last question is, what is your next big project? You must have something up your sleeve. I mean, you went from being, you know, editorial cartoonist to XYZ. What comes after that?
You know, and artists always have something up their sleeves, all the, you know, journalists and in general and all that. But no, I'm working on a book project now, so I'm working on that, so that's a very exciting project. It's a very involving project. I've been working and researching on it for some years now. So I'm just now at the point where they say the rubber is about to meet the road. You know, that is drawing and drawing and drawing and drawing and drawing and drawing again. But I've done lots of research about it. I've been researching for this number of years now, and so I'm very excited about it. And I must admit, I want to take I will take a bit of break from my usual editorial work and concentrate on that before I get back. So that's something that I'm really looking forward to.